Alright, my friends, so actually now we handled the form, and we are going now to go further to handling the first API errors. Now actually I should by now be able to send the cities to the location, and there is no way I can stop that API because I have to send the city name to the API, and the API define or set or determine whether this is a valid city, this is a real city or not. And not to do that and stay on the front end and test that, it's hard because you will need to get a JS file in which you will write all the city names in the world, and you will run through it and validate if this city is there, then make an error. So the front end error here will be actually sticking to what's coming from the back end. So it will happen after the location calls the back end. But what if the location was not found? Actually, the API has an answer for that. If there is an error, it will give you a message dealing with this error. And the way now is that after we go and talk to the location, we will not get that unless we have a real city with a name. So before that, what if there was not location, or maybe a location error? This is what we want to deal with, but right now we should first write that in the get city location before that's on the server, if you remember, before we reach that. So what if here we come and say if there is, because you know the city name comes from data.geonames 0. What the 0 means that there is a city in the array. What if that there isn't a city in the array? Then in this case the geonames 0 will be empty. So what if there is no length for that? If no data.geonames.length, this means it's 0, and the 0 in programming means false, at least in JavaScript as I remember. In this case we need here to make a const, but this const will be different a little bit, and we will say in this const that it is an error message. So the message will say no city with that name, please make sure of your spelling. So by this way we tell the user to use another name or check his spelling, and the error here is true. This means that if there is an error and the error is true, and the whole thing will not go to the front end with this name, it will go as a location, remember, because whatever you are returning here, it will be returned as an object. So this is the object that will return, because once I do like that, I will say return whatever this object is. This is just a name for the object. I can just take these and put them here and I will get the same result. So the message says no city with that name, please make sure of your spelling. Or I can say error, and just also say that the error is true. This is a little way to give me the option of dealing with the boolean of the message, because this is a good way to know that if there is an error or not. Actually there is also a message that comes from here I can present, but this one I found more expressive because the other one says no city with that name, but this one is better because it says please make sure of your spelling. This is a good way to tell the user that please, if you are not making it the correct way, please try to make it the correct way. So here I will come and I will say if location, because in all cases now there will be a location coming. It's not a real location, but I mean this const will return something, of course, because here I am returning something. So it will be returned through my server. Where is my server? Here it is. There will be something here returned. It's called location, you know, which is here also called location. That's why I'm calling it location. So if location dot error. Okay, so if location dot error, in this case I want you to deal with that, and let's remember where we will put the error. Remember when we said there is something called city error. Now the city error and our HTML will equal, let me write something like the error message. So this is, you can find in local location dot message. I guess I named it like that here. Yes, it's called message. And let me remember, or put it here. Well, yes, so show the location dot message, and of course I have to make it display will equal style first. Yeah, style the display will equal block. Okay, so in this case I will set it to block. But what if we, as I told you before, what if we run through this, and this time this will just like it will be here, even the validate inputs will not remove it. So I need, if we passed this, to make sure it is not there, you know, because we will not reach this state unless this vanish and this also vanish. If this vanished, I will test the API request, and the result will be, if there is an error, make it a block and write the message. If there is no error, then please make sure to hide that again, because it is now. So if I did like this, and then I come to set London, it will disappear, and then I come to put something in the future, this also will disappear, and everything will work fine. But what if I entered this and started to see what is the result? Now we have an Axios error, and I tell you why this error. I think because we didn't return, right? Yeah, we should return here. I think so. Still, maybe there is more errors coming, so let's see. Should put the date, and then okay, so now it is working fine. No city with that name. Please make sure of your spelling, and let's see that with a valid city but not a valid date. So now we have a date thing, and now we will change that like this, and I should return another thing here. No city with that name. What if I search it for London? Well, London will come. What if after I search for London I do that? No city with that name. Please make sure of your spelling. Well, so my first error handler is working fine. Alright, so now, although we have made a validate inputs, you know, and we can understand, or we can know if the date is less than 0, the application will make an error. But what if the same thing, what if the client made a postman request and entered from postman or something like this past date? We are still, or our servers then will be still vulnerable. And I wanted to cure that on the front end, but I found that this also is actually connected with the server. So the same thing we did in the get city location, we will now try to do with the get weather, because here in the get weather you will find that I am making if remaining days greater than 0 and less than 7, do that. If they are greater than 7, do that. But what if remaining days is actually coming with a negative number? Like, let's say the client succeeded in making a negative remaining days. In this case, we need the same thing we did with the error message, but this time the error message will be something different, which is date cannot be in the past. By this way, we are preventing the user from making such a mistake again. So this time we will make that. So there is an error message that will come just like you see here, and the same thing should be put here. So if we said that our days so if our days, let me think about it again. So yes, I think it's going to come with the weather, you know. So if or maybe I think we should, before even going to, actually in both cases we should do that. So if, I mean, before the Weather API and after it, because this will secure me that I will not even call the API, and this one will enable me to actually start to let's say deal with if I call the API and I realized that the remaining days are more than less than 0. So if there is weather dot error, the same thing we did with the city error, you know, here location error. So if there is weather error, do the following, and the following will be, we will make a date error. So let's see what was the date error we put here. So I can get that from, yep, from here. Yes, let's say these are they, and I will come here and yes, if there is weather dot error, please put a date error with but not enter a valid date. It was something like what, yeah, its date cannot be in the past. In such a case, so date cannot be in the past, and return, this meaning that you will get out of the application. So as we said, this is curing the way that a man can reach the server through an external service that can make requests to the HTTP. And here also you will make the same thing, but we will put if our days are less than 0, please put the same thing. Now why I'm putting it here, as I told you guys, it's for the same reason. So if he put it without even using the front end, and he tried to make this, but I think this will not do anything, right? Yes. Okay, so this will not do anything. Yes, because he will have to now call the Weather API directly, put in all the data, so it will be the error handler here. So I have put here a date error.start.display none, because actually if he found a weather error and then we changed our form date and we put an available one, then the error should be removed. The same thing we did with the validate URL. But all I'm saying here is the validate inputs is only working in the front end through our user interface. But this one is for the way someone may order without the user interface, and we can test that right now because right now I don't have the postman actually, I guess. So this will not be able to show up, but it's okay. It will work the same way the user interface work. So now we have secured this thing to here also and here, but still there is one thing left, that yes, the man may also put no date. So what will happen in this case? There will be no R days actually, because he didn't enter a date. So in this case I will say if not R days, because in this case the user didn't enter a date through postman. If not R days, the same thing will happen. And we will say, but I think that we have another thing here, another message, just like what? Let me see. It is the same, just like here. It was, yeah, please enter a valid date. So I'll come here, I'll put it, please enter a valid date. And let's get back here and say, let's go to handle submit. And we will come here and say yeah, I got a mistake, guys. So I should have put here the error message. By this way, whatever the message is, it will be returned. So I'm sorry, this is really nice, because by this way we are dealing with whatever the error is coming from the back end, it will show up here. This is very nice, because by this way in post ways I'm returning the error message, and whatever the message is, it will appear. So now even if he didn't put anything, the weather message will only change, but we don't need to put any other code. I'm sorry for that, but thanks to God, this is the way it is. For the last step, which is getting the image, you don't need to do anything about that, because there will always be an image, as we said before, because I will always make sure that we have two, or we have another alternative if there was no image for the country, as I told you, and he will not reach this step unless everything is right. So there is no need to worry about that. Now let's see if there is something on the server that we need to put or to expect an error about. So guess what? Actually, I revised my previous made project and I found out that there are no more errors to deal with. We have already done everything here. No city with that name. Please make sure of your spelling. Maybe we didn't deal with when the input is empty, because you know that if he tried to do so, he will be teased because the server will not crash or something, because he will get a country. So this is different from handling Weatherbit, because in Weatherbit, if there were no R days, if there is no date input, things will crash. But here things will not crash, because still the API expects that not an empty city getting him to call for a city. So there is nothing else in the error validation we need to add. Now we will move to the next step, and the next step is actually the jest. So we should put just testing, and this is the way that testing the application will be fine, because we need to do that as a way to make sure that everything is working fine. But actually this is not the real purpose. The real purpose is because the project demands Jest. But if you're gonna work with Jest, you will do a lot more than we will do here. This is the normal, because Jest is a big framework for testing, and it's usually the work of the front end, and he must be able to study it first to work on it in a better way, and I mean in a professional way. Yet here we will only touch the surface of it and do 2 or 3 functions just to touch or deal with very superficial mistakes or errors that may happen in our application, but not more than that, because this is not required by the project and because it's not the role we should do in this project.